Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video from the test server today. With the DLC around the corner, I did want to release this video just because if some of you guys haven't been on the forums or seen trade chat in game, there is some massive changes coming to some superchargers that'll be live basically tomorrow when the DLC hits. So I do want you to be aware of that if you kind of haven't been following along. What I'll do is we'll jump to the forums here and take a look at what the changes actually are. Okay, so this whole thing started on the forums. Like I said, the devs have been really vocal on their feedback or accepting feedback for this episode, which is great. It's great for the community that they're being so involved. So basically, it started with a post from AVR, who's basically the lead system designer, with him saying, give us some feedback about balancing, or basically difficulty feedback, because the whole song and dance has always been they come up with elite raids, they're piss easy, like Panny, Throny, and not even the 1% or the 0.1%, because I hate when people refer to that, because you can't. Where's the proof that it's only 1% of us? Who's to say even 80% of the game even raids? Like, we have no idea how much or how big the population is. It's just a niche thing to say, oh, it's the 1% or the 0.1%. But there's been enough vocal feedback from any number of leagues and any number of players that want challenging content. I'm not talking about like Paradox Wave unbeatable stuff. I'm talking about just something to give us a challenge where we're just not sleepwalking through it. So AVR made this post saying, give us an idea what you want for feedback. Is things too hard? What's going on? Basically, I wrote kind of like pretty much an essay response saying like, look, you can't balance anything without taking a look at Gemini, the Manacles, Soul Cloak, Dash Attack, Amazon Deflection, Prec Single Target. Like I said, like you can't balance content when you have all these things that unbalance content themselves. Basically, the number one culprit is artifacts, and there's a few like kind of outlying powers like Group Transducer, Dash Attack, stuff like that. All common knowledge. Like you can go to any raid on Live or Crown, you can see tanks spamming Dash Attack, you can see healers spamming Transducer every 24 seconds. Like, it's not that this is only used by a select few. This is all over the place. So basically, that led to a huge thread here, and then basically it led to the devs saying, basically owning up to what artifacts have done. Because the borderline, when we had stats, like all the content, all the supercharges, all the power sets, they're all designed from stats revamp. Nothing's really changed at all since then. But with stats revamp, artifacts weren't even a thought. So now we have all these 23 artifacts that impact different variations of the game mechanics, and some are throwing them way out of whack like supercharges. So basically they said they want supercharges to be fun, impactful, impressive. They want you to be able to have fun with them, but they don't want them to be game breaking at the same time and make you to ignore ignore mechanics. Same thing with artifacts. They want to these items are here to promote creating new playstyles, adjust current game rules, and giving long-term goals and serving that, yada yada. The same concept is that they want you to use artifacts, they want you to be able to use supercharges, they just don't want them to be game-breaking, which is what they are right now. So basically, that announced a couple changes. So basically, there's two waves of changes. Last week we saw Supercharge Shield. So basically the first thing they did, they don't want to nerf artifacts. That's the one thing they didn't do here. Like personally, I just would have adjusted Gemini. That's way easier, but they chose, instead of adjusting artifacts, and people would be then upset saying, well, I paid for this, why are you nerfing it? Even though ironically they're saying that now, even though the Supercharge changes, even though the artifacts aren't changing, but we'll get to those, for lack of a more eloquent word, morons later in the video. But essentially, I just want to talk about the changes and touch on that first. So basically, the Supercharge changes, they changed Group Transducer, Transcendent, Sacrifice, and Tranquil Pool, all to a 10,000 Supercharge cost. They didn't change the cooldowns. We'll get to basically the breakdown in a sec. But that's the first step they took. The second step, because basically that was all fine and dandy. The only thing is you can still use Gemini on the 1 second supercharges to spam supercharge batteries. And, that's what people are doing on Live. So the second wave of changes was Vacuum Bubble, Devastating Flip, Dash Attack, Gale, Speed Drain, and Bloom, which is all the iconic and movement mode supercharges. Stayed the same cost, but they went to 30-second cooldowns. So now Dash Attack, a little bit overboard. I didn't care about Vacuum Bubble or Speed Drain and stuff. That was more on the DPS side. Because if a healer's going to use Speed Drain to spam Supercharge, then, well, that's pretty much a waste of power. Like, it does nothing. Like, a tank can still spam Dash Attack and have a 1 second shield that's as strong as Hardlight Shield. Like, that's ridiculous. And completely screws up content. So dash attack was the only one I cared about being nerfed. They changed all to 30 seconds. So, whatever. We just have to deal with that change, but I only cared about dash attack. The other ones, I guess they're just keeping everything in line. But same thing. So everything went to 30 seconds. So we can kind of touch on what that actually did. So with the actual changes here, what I'll do is actually we'll hop back to the game just so we can kind of show you a visible change. Okay, so we're back on test server. As you can see right now, I have a 5,000 Supercharge saved up for Neovenom. So if we say we change to like electric here, actually we'll just might as well change to celestial so I can show off another power. It's the same thing. We've got concentrated ground and we've got sacrifice. And we'll just ditch the other stuff. So as you can see, sacrifice, 30-second cooldown, same as before, just a 10,000 power cost. So now, as you can see, we're about halfway there, which makes sense because 5,000, it just basically shows like a visible representation. Like this is how much Supercharge you would have had to use sacrifice before. Now you need twice as much. The head mods have changed. Like say if you have Supercharged sacrifice, it gives 10% now instead of 5%, which is basically keeping in line with the other 100%ers. Celestial is also a bigger thing as well because now with both of them costing the same, yes, concentrated ground is 60 seconds, but they cost the same. So if you're not spamming, as much supercharged regen as you can, you have a choice now to use concentrated ground or sacrifice. Same thing as fire tanks. Instead of bloom, you have a choice to use bloom or internal flame or reignition. So let's hop back to the graph there. Okay, so with basically the shield changes here summarized. So transducer, transcendence, tranquil pool, sacrifice, concentrated ground, even though it didn't change, I just put that as a baseline, and then dash attack. So as I said before, cooldowns 30 seconds for all, they still the same. Concentrated ground was a 60, it's still a 60 because this wasn't touched at all. Dash attack 1 second to 30. The supercharge costs basically all the 5,000s to 10. And dash attack stayed the same price in terms of supercharge cost. Now the big thing is the actual base shield multiplier, because they said if you go back to those changes, basically this one here, they basically either increased the value of the shield portion or in Transcendence they reduced it. So basically they're trying to bring the supercharges a bit more in line with each other. So basically electric before was a 5.7, now it's a 3.96. So basically it's not a huge nerf, but a fairly noticeable nerf. It's like, what is it, like 30%? I could be wrong off the top of my head there. But I'll show it in a graph a little later. So Transcendence 1.5 modifier to 2.52. So once again, not a giant increase, but basically a 1% modifier increase. Water Tranquil Pool 0.19, 1.09, 1.73. Tranquil Pool is still incredibly weak because they balance the supercharge shields against the healing. So since Tranquil Pool gives you some healing as well and a shield, that's how it's a bit balanced, where like say Group Transducer is no healing, it's just a shield. So they did that. I don't necessarily agree with that because like Tranquil Pool is weak anyway, that you might as well use Flood of Power and to spam like some heals. Sacrifice did not change. Sacrifice is the exact same as it was before. So now 3.03, 3.96, like Group Transducer isn't that much better than Sacrifice. Celestial still, the only thing obviously is sacrifice, you don't get a shield yourself as a healer, which becomes the issue. Now the question is, if you're a Celestial healer, you can use concentrated ground again, because it's a little bit tricky because concentrated ground is not considered a shield. So say if you're using the manacles, it's not going to give you that 10% cooldown. Concentrated ground is just something in itself, but in the past it was incredibly powerful. It still is. You can see a 7.69 modifier, so it's almost like twice as strong as Transducer as a shield. Same power cost, it's just a 60-second cooldown. So same thing with atomic mass density, it's a 60-second cooldown, not that it changed at all, but it's still very powerful. Dash attack went from a 2.49 to 2.99. The 2.99 is the same as perfect poise, so it's the same shield basically. It's perfect poise, it does the same thing, just different effects. With the other movement mode changes, so basically I tested them at 4,132 or 392 base might. Vacuum bubble hit for about 92k. It was 6 ticks. I couldn't hit all 8 targets. Those are basically what the ticks were and the crits. Devastating flip got a bit of a nerf because this on live is stronger right now than the other ones. Basically that was 77k, 8 ticks of damage. The crits. This will be better on single target. Gale went to about 80k. That's the skimming one. Speed drain basically this one became the good one. Not, well, good is subjective because it's still a 30-second cooldown Supercharge. So even a 30-second Supercharge as a 25 power cost, 2500 is basically 138k, a dot tick basically. So basically speed drain was good because it was 1 second. You could always proc the Gemini. I used it as ice, atomic, munitions. Now you can't, so it's going to have to change slightly. It's going to be a different playstyle. Pheromone Bloom, basically they said they increased the healing on it. I got a burst heal of about 30k. This is about 11k resto. A burst heal of 30k, 12 ticks of 649 to 722. So total healing in 20 seconds was about 38k at that about 11k resto. Pheromone Bloom also does a burst damage. I think it was around like 35k, 25k, 35k, somewhere in that range. Could be wrong. And then trying to remember. It does okay damage. It wasn't as good as some of the other ones, but Pheromone Bloom does do damage as well as healing. Not that you'd really use it as a damage supercharge, especially being 30 seconds is not as good as other ones, but that's basically the changes there. Basically on live, Devastating Flip was first, Speed Drain was second, Vacuum Bubble and Gale were like half as much as Speed Drain. Like Vacuum Bubble and Gale on live are just crap. So now obviously Vacuum Bubble got a bit of a buff, Gale stayed about the same. Speed Drain probably was an increase. I think it was about like 80k on live, down to 137, but obviously the might went up by like 5k. Devastating Flip got a nerf for whatever reason. Basically, here's a little graph showing the multipliers. Red is after, blue is before. So as you can see, dash attack got a little bit slightly stronger. 2.49 and 2.99. Contra to ground stayed the same. Sacrifice stayed the same. Tranquil Pool got a little bit of an increase. Transcendence got a decent increase. And then Group Transducer took a hefty nerf. Basically a 5.7 down to a 3.96. So obviously it's still going to be useful. It's not like you're just going to ditch electric healers anymore, just because Transcendence is still very strong. It's still electric is still the best burst heal out of anything. But now you could certainly see more viable Celestials out there, just because they can run Concentrated Ground now because it's the same cost, just a bit different of a cooldown. But it's nice because it gives some playstyle opportunities. So I guess I could quickly address what the issue was on the forums with all this. They're saying that, since you changed Supercharge cost, I paid for my Gemini just so I could spam Supercharges and exploit content. So now I want a refund. I'm going to quit the game because you nerfed Gemini. But even though they didn't nerf Gemini, like literally, that's the only argument that they can make, because they know that they just wanted the Supercharge spam to make content easy. They just wanted to, every time a CB slam, where's my Supercharge? Every time Column Wrath did a skull, where's my Supercharge? They just want to exploit game mechanics and just have sleep through the raids. And now they're crying and bitching and moaning about, wasting money on a Gemini, even though the Gemini is Gemini and Soul Cloak are the only artifacts in the game that work for both roles. So as a controller, if I level up the Amulet of Ra or the Parasite Power Harness, if I switch to tank, I just wasted, 700k XP, or $100, $75, whatever it costs to level up from 0. So I just waste all that money because I can't use it as a tank. But if I have either Gemini or Scrap of the Soul Cloak, I can use that in every single role. If I switch to healer, I can use both. If I switch to DPS, if I switch to tank, if I switch to controller, Gemini and Scrap of the Soul Cloak have the most viability out of any artifact. So to bitch and cry and complain about them changing it for just increasing the healer power costs is completely asinine. Like, that's just a ridiculous argument, because it doesn't make any sense. They haven't even nerfed a Gemini. Gemini stayed the exact same. Yes, they increased the power cost on Supercharges. Didn't matter with Gemini. If you still want to use the most Supercharge you can, you still have to use Gemini and Soul Cloak. There's no other combo you have to use. If you want to use your Supercharge as often as you can, you still have to use those two artifacts. So how is it wasting money? But whatever, I've been going in circles with those, for lack of an eloquent word again, morons on the forums. But these are the changes that are coming out tomorrow. I just wanted you guys to be ready for them. The only major change is more like a playstyle difference. Like, you're still going to be using the same powers. DPS is going to change slightly because some of you guys are using Speed Drain or Gale or whatever. Though that's going to change now. The other nice thing is they did say they'd be adjusting Supercharges in the future, but who knows when that's happening. And then the only other playstyle change is really for Celestial. Now you've got a choice. Do you run Sacrifice or do you run Concentrated Ground? But take care, guys. DLC will be coming out tomorrow, probably after 8-hour downtime or whatever. If you've got any questions or comments, just leave them in the section below.